Okay, TGI Friday. Let me put something to bed just now. There's a lot of things going around about the 50 hours of sellback comp time. It is not dead in arrival. There certainly was some issues, some questions. There's certainly an attempt by the city finance department to get out from under paying anything this year because it is clear what their number one priority is, and that is the migrants. And they want to rob Peter to pay Paul any way chance they can. I'll just tell you this. It was always the intent, it was always the understanding by both parties that there would be a payout this year. I agree, the language is a little bit wonky to say the least. I'll take the blame for that, but that still doesn't change the fact what the understanding was, what the intent was, and multiple supporting conversations to say that it was supposed to be paid out this year. There is a solution that's been proposed to the city, the lead negotiator at Management and Labor Affairs. Waiting to hear back if that's going to be an acceptable solution to this problem. As soon as we have an answer, we will certainly let you know. But again, this in no way diminishes a historic contract settlement that we did manage to finally secure in the context of, well, a horrible mayor for sure. And this one, I would say the jury's still out, but it's certainly looking like he's just a lost ship at sea. She was the Titanic ramming into icebergs. He's just floating at sea with no idea what to do at all. But I will tell you this. It was another historic week for many purposes. Not too often does a union, a municipal union, go to court to enforce contractual provisions. And this administration has not only done it once now, but twice, and successfully obtained temporary restraining orders against the city for violating contractual policies. I can assure you it's extremely rare that it gets taken to court, and it's even more extremely rare that a TRO is granted. But this week, because Mayor Johnson and his allies think they can interpret law any way they see fit, just like Kim Foxx, they punted the ball yet again on dealing with the last part of the Phase 2, which is the termination for arbitration for termination cases. It's disgusting. There's a lot of lives in the balance here, and there was an interesting argument made at court, but it was pretty clear the judge was not going to have a lot of leeway for them to play with, and that there needed to be some relief for the officers' lives who were hanging in the balance currently, and that's where we're at. So the fact that he put a total halt to any police board activities, I mean, this is like police board cases that were even concluded but not deliberated and determined yet. They can't even do that. Nothing, the police, they're basically laid off for 30 days. So we'll see where the next 3 weeks go. The city council will, according to calendar, have one more bite at the apple. If not, we'll be back to court, and we'll see what the judge is going to do from there. But understand the significance. It certainly does not affect as many as the first temporary restraining order with the COVID fight and allowing everybody to get those exemptions, over 3,000 plus officers. That was absolutely a fight that needed to happen, and I think the labor board in the very near future here is going to solidify that position, and it's going to present another problem for this city, especially with the convention coming up. But this one was even more important because it protects a just simple labor law principle, not only today, but tomorrow and for future generations of officers who were basically going to be subjected to a kangaroo court only in the police board. There's no other way to slice it. I mean, they literally are just doing the city's bidding at this point. And, you know, I've heard a lot of arguments back and forth from the left side specifically and about accountability, about all of this nonsense arguments. And there's so many BS arguments that they're trying to drum up emotion over. I'll give you a couple examples. They keep talking about money and police misconduct. Well, it's kind of like Kim Foxx issuing a certificate of innocence and then giving Lovey and Lovey business, and then Lovey and Lovey donates to her campaign. They basically get a lawsuit against the city and they settle it. And then they use the argument that police misconduct now is the reason why we have to have this transparency, accountability, and all this other stuff and extra layers of oversight, because they're too afraid to fight lawsuits in court for frivolous, quite frequently, BS. many times. And the total just keeps going up and up and up. But he had no problem stealing $95 million of COVID money for the migrants. He has no problem, $1 million every 3 days, they say, for police misconduct over the last several years. But they spend $4.5 million every 3 days for the migrants. $4.5 million. What could the city residents do with that money, if not get some of it back, but at least programs, development? You want to talk about the south and west side, underdeveloped, just not paid attention to, ignored, the homeless all over the streets of Chicago, which, tough luck, too bad, so sad. You weren't born in another country, so you don't count, apparently. There's just so much nonsense around this. But the transparency aspect of it alone is just a fallacy. The charges will be public the way we go forward. The publication will be there. You just won't be able to sit into the hearing. But the deliberations at the police board are absolutely behind closed doors too. And the fact that our members will finally get a fair shake and be able to call, our attorneys will be able to call witnesses and cross-examine the COPA investigators or the internal affairs investigators who are making these recommendations and finding out what they did, why they did it, and what they didn't do, and what they should have done, and have answers for that, which will lead to a fairer just decision. And, the conversation about how the police board has basically exonerated more than half the officers in the last 2 years. That's because they knew this was coming down. That's because the city knew they were going to lose this. And prior to that, it was a slam dunk the opposite way, where I believe it was over 85% of the officers were terminated for several years. But they knew the public sentiment was going to be a very key component to all of this, and they had to seem like they were fair, so they started to slant their decisions in the opposite direction to just be a little more balanced. It had nothing to do with the cases. It was all about the statistics, and they were aware of the statistics. Max Caprone's been a lackey at the police board forever, at least 20 years. His day's coming too. I mean, it's just such bad, it's past its born date. I can rant on and on and on about the police board. They say, it's not personal, it's business. Well, phase 2 was business. For me, this part was personal. I know the struggles of these officers who are facing these police board terminations, the mental struggles specifically, and how much it torments people, especially for the really egregiously unfair ones. It's inexcusable, and I couldn't tell you how happy I was to be able to call Eric Stillman and tell him that we got him some time and some relief for now, and hopefully that will continue and we can get him a much fairer hearing in front of an arbitrator instead of the police board. So stay tuned. Have a good weekend. As soon as I have an answer on their other subject matter, I will certainly get it out to the membership. Have a good weekend.